Whole time? Because you said it was on Saturday, it was long.
It was
and you
long.
got tired.
Well,
Did
yeah,
you get tired? 'Cause I didn't get tired. I don't know
That's
about you guys. We said that our guys got a little tired and wore out. I personally didn't feel like that, personally, because we're training to do this. So if we're a little long, maybe you guys don't have to come into a little bit later. So if the practice get along for you guys, I don't want your batteries and things to run out. As you can tell, we're not stopping, and we've got to continue to push. I think that's the biggest emphasis. This is the tough time right here. 8, 9, 10. 8, 9, 10, and probably half of their buddies and people have moved on from spring ball already. But this is a really, really big time for us because we'll find out mentally where we are as a football team. There's a lot of really good things that happen on Saturday, and a lot of tough things that happened on Saturday, meaning live situations, play-it situations, literally live, probably 65 snaps of live full tackle, and things change, and things become a little bit more emotional and adrenaline, and some of the mistakes that were made, I think, were because of that. And so our ability to come out here on Tuesday, Thursday, and correct those mistakes and not make the same mistakes over and over again is really, really important to us. But it only happens if we're mentally in the right place. And so the challenge for these guys, and for us as coaches too, because it's the same thing. We want to put in more, when in reality, we got to fix the things that haven't been the way we want them right now. And so we as coaches got to do a really good job at pulling back a little bit to make sure, that we can correct the things and continue to get better at what it is that we do, as opposed to always keep adding. There's a difference between the ones and the twos. In particular, that offense and offensive line. I mean, you could do about anything. You could put in the whole gamut and they would be fine. But I don't know that it helps the whole picture. So there's a little bit of balance for us as coaches, but for the players-wise, this is going to be the grind. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and everything in between this week in particular.
When you're talking about some correcting things, what are some of those things?
Well, I mean, there's just we had a play-it situation on Saturday where there was a sudden change. The ball goes on the 15-yard line and first snap, they throw a touchdown pass. I mean, it's a really specific situation that we didn't execute in a way that something that kind of was meant for that defensively. And so guess what we did? We came out here, that ball happened to go on the 15-yard line in the same situation again, and hopefully we corrected some of those things. And so that's more, all of a sudden you go live and your fundamentals go out the window because in your mind it's just like, finally we get to play live. It's not something we get to do as often. We did it 0 times last year, I think, in spring, other than the spring game, the second half. We didn't do it much in fall camp, and then we get in game 1 and we recognize that we're not very good tacklers. We're really poor in space. We don't hold on to the football well enough when we're in live situations. We're 120th in the country in fumbles lost. So those things, there's a balance between getting guys hurt and things like that, but the opportunity for us to go live, to see how guys handle some of those emotional situations, and can they kind of refer back to their fundamentals and do the little things really well.
You mentioned the offensive line in your opening statement. I'm just wondering, what have been your general impressions of how that line's performed so far this spring? How have they kind of adjusted to another new position coach?
I would say most improved, because they were a really good unit last year, but I'd say there's a big difference in just their ability to do things together. I think it's been uniquely, from the edges, I think that's where it all works from. And I think we're in a really, really good place. Those two edge guys have, in my opinion, been as good as I've seen in a long time. Consistency, and then correcting some of the things that we were maybe not as good at last year. So I think as a whole, those guys are doing a really good job. They're playing in unison. They're protecting the quarterback pretty well. Some of the situations we threw a pick today, but really he's protected really, really well in a blitz pickup. Guy down the field makes a really good play. But I think that unit in general is setting a standard for how you do things, and I've been impressed.
What would you like to see over the last 7 practices or so, specifically Braden and Tyler, to feel good about going into the offseason where they're at?
We've got to get to these play-it situations. We've got to put one in there and just, hey, go with the ones and you go with the twos and manage the situation, the group, and know what you got. And to see how they kind of handle it. It's hard on both of them when you're bouncing back and forth. You're with the ones, now you're with the twos. Where the offensive line, the uniqueness is this ability for those 5 guys to work in unison. You haven't had that opportunity with the quarterbacks, so it's kind of a tougher situation. But I want to see them both kind of come out of their shells, leadership-wise, when they're in there to take charge. And I think in particular Tyler is still learning a lot of the system. Sometimes that makes it a little bit more difficult on him. But for anything, I want to see consistency. I want to see leadership. I want to see that demeanor, that body language, regardless of what happens. You know, we do a pick today, and you can just kind of tell. Then all of a sudden we throw a deep ball, and it's a really nice, catch down the sidelines, and you should see the stand tall and a little bit of bounce. And at that position, you can't have those emotional roller coasters.
Last week you said practices 5 through 9, those are going to be the ones where you can kind of find out more about your team. What have you liked from what you've seen so far, and what are you kind of looking forward to over the last 2 months?
We're looking forward to see if we can maintain and create some consistency. From energy to how you do everything to the little fundamental things. That's what you're going to find out. And that's why as coaches, we got to do a really good job at not trying to continue to overload different things when really we're trying to find consistency. Well, hey coach, help us out, be consistent as well. Don't keep adding things so that we aren't getting consistent at the things that we're doing. So we got to do a good job as a balance as coaches, but continuing to apply the pressure to these guys to make sure they understand, like, we only have 15 opportunities. We only get 34 days in spring, and I promised them that we were going to push and use every single one of them. As many, the 40 hours that were allotted is only what's average, and the things that they have to do on their own in these 34 days is really going to be critical. So if they're doing those things, the consistency will show in those 7, 8, 9, 10, as well as how mentally tough are we as a team.
Luke, what have you seen from or learned about RJ Delancey since he's got here? I know it's been only 8 practices now, but
well, I've seen some competition. I think so far, in my opinion, one of the most improved guys has been Nazir. And so that's created maybe that competition there. RJ's made some plays today. We got to find it. That's when this last few weeks, we know we're going to challenge those guys in different ways. We talked offensively about finding ways to make sure it might not be the perfect time and the opportunity to take some of those shots, but we got to find out what we've got over there. But it's similar, and we've been very fortunate. And, we talked about Tyree the other day. With what I've enjoyed about him is his maturity, and kind of the same thing with RJ. He's a competitor. He's come in. He's competed. He hasn't caused any issues of any sorts, and he's, from the most part, he's bought into the things that we do and the way that which we do them. And so I think that the ceiling, he's still running from 178 pounds to 192 pounds. I mean, there's some really, really good things that are created, and he's bringing not just to us, but also in the competitive nature.
I'm sure you're still very much evaluating what you have from a roster standpoint. Now that the portal's open, how active do you anticipate being?
I'm focused on spring ball right now. Yeah, that's something that unfortunately we'll have to deal with, but it's not something I want to talk a whole lot about. I mean, these guys that we've got right here are what we've got to focus on. The spring portal time is not a big time for us. I'm not saying it won't be something, but the idea of keeping the guys that we got, maintaining these guys, I think is really going to be the most important thing for us. And, so I don't want to talk about it, because if I'm talking about it, then the kids are talking about it. And the reality is, it's how do we stay focused? How do we be consistent? It's making sure that we're locked into what we're doing here.
halfway through spring, it's not competition in that tight end room. What do you feel like you've gotten some of those guys that have been getting a lot of those reps?
I wish Tuck was healthier, and could go the whole time. He's had some issues, hamstring-wise. We've got a variety now. I think what we had was pretty much a similar type of guys, and I think right now what we do have is some variety. We've got an older guy in Riley Milikowski that I think can do it all. I think you've got a younger guy in Tucker Ashcraft that played some last year, but I think the sky's the limit. You got a guy like Jackson McGohan that's a little bit different than those guys. Is learning and is new, but gives a completely different skill set. And then you got your JTs, and you've got some of those other guys that are just still really trying to figure out where they fit in that mix. Are they, a do everything guy? Are they a little bit more of a hybrid type of guy? And but that position in particular, I think I said it last year, is the biggest change, and I think all that we do. There's not that before they didn't have the stuff on their plate in the system that they played in, but I think in our system, in this system, I think the tight ends have as much on their plate learning to play the game, I think, different than they probably had in high school than any other position.
So with the tight ends, didn't see Rob Booker out there. Is there an injury on his end?
Yeah, he's got a little something, so he wasn't out here. I don't think he was out here maybe on Saturday either.
I think Thursday too.
I don't know which one, but yeah. So we've had some injuries in that room.
Rico Hallman, is he a guy that, I know he had off-season surgery, but is he a guy that maybe you get back later in the spring, or do you want to kind of keep him on the side?
No, we probably won't. He probably will be in a yellow jersey late in the spring doing maybe some 7-on-7 and non-contact, but it's the situation. He's played a lot of football. Do you put him in a situation where it's not going to be the best for him? And the big thing for him, for us, is his training. I mean, he just needs to keep running, because the hard part, one of the big reasons he came back is to be better, right? And then the big thing we talked about with him is being better is physically, your body, your ability, your strength, your speed. And when you're out, it's a little bit harder to do some of those things. So our big focus on him is just getting him as healthy as he possibly can, getting him as strong as he possibly can, work on his speed, and allow him to, his football instincts and football sense is really, really good, and probably won't do much of anything this spring.
How would you assess the defensive line to this point? You got JT's the only guy truly back that has a ton of experience, but Kurt Neal there too, and Ben Barton, but some of the other guys.
When you say D-line, it's kind of hard. If you're talking about the interior guys, I mean, there's a lot of different things, but I think we were building some depth. I mean, I think that obviously right now you feel good about being at least 4 deep, with 2 guys playing and 2 guys rolling. Now we got to find out who 5 and 6 are, and it's created some competition. But James is battling through some issues, which he's always kind of had some little nicks and bruises. Different, I think he's fighting through some of those things. Kurt Neal has been not to say a big surprise. I mean, he played big time later in the year last year. I think in the bowl game he played really, really well. He's going to be a different force. And if you look at the 2 guys, it's not hard to figure out they're different, right? One's 6'6", one's 6'2". Kurt, I said you were 6'2". But just by nature, they possess some different things, and they could be on either side. So it gives different looks. And then Ben Barton and Cade McDonald and some of those other guys, Elijah Hill's a young guy, or a new guy that came in that's going to provide, some difference for us. Then we got to see with some of those young guys and how that whole mix kind of works. But being able to use some of those outside guys moving inside as the outside linebackers can be something that be a little bit unique for us as well.
So on that line with EJ, just how have you seen him come in when he did, and how have you seen him interact and develop the players, and also on the recruiting trail?
Yeah, it's been one of those situations. That room, they've had some turnover, right? I mean, they've had a couple different coaches, and it's not like you want to be a one and done, but so he's had to come in and embrace those guys and make sure he build a relationship. But he's by nature what it is that we want. I mean, he's tough. He's hard on him. He's going to push him, and I think that understanding that, learning a little bit of a different way of which we want to go about that position in particular, I think has been unique. I think he's done a phenomenal job. I think his guys have responded really well. But I think there's a big growth process right there. That's why we're counting on James Thompson and Kurt Neal, because no matter what's being said and done, like, those guys are still going to be the ones that lead. And they buy, they believe, they do, then it trickles down a lot easier. And so that's why it's a big deal for those EJ and those 2 in particular, to make sure that those guys are the ones that are the leaders of that group.
When guys are going through maybe ups and downs, as a coaching staff, how much is it maybe trying to help fix those mistakes as to looking to see how they can overcome them?
Well, at some point in time, these guys got to fix their mistakes themselves. That's why pros don't wait for tomorrow, at 8 o'clock in tomorrow morning's meetings to watch it and try to figure out how do we get it fixed. Like, if they don't go back today and go to class and do what they do, and then take some time to watch it and try to fix it themselves before they walk in, you're not going to be a great player. You're not going to continue to grow for us if you're going to be spoon-fed everything. So that's a little bit part of the expectation that that we've got to force upon them. I don't care whether you're 18 years old or you're 23 years old. We got some guy, maybe a 60-year guy. Like, we have the same expectation for you. Well, I've got a bunch of classes and I got study table. Well, you know what? Life's not easy. And this league and our expectations aren't getting any easier. Right? So the big thing we keep saying is, hey, you know what you signed up for. I know what I signed up for. Everybody that's here knows what they signed up for. And pushing those things, but making sure guys understand they have to see it grow. And that was one of the things that we switched up meetings a little bit yesterday, so we have some more time, because we've been pushing, because we've been hard. But you need guys like Mel, and some of those young D linemen like Ernest, and them to see some of the growth things, even though they're getting hollered at and pushed, and maybe getting beat around a little bit at times, but there's a lot of growth there that we got to make sure they still see. We're not going to keep pushing them. There's a ton of growth. Sometimes it gets overshadowed by the ones and the twos, and sometimes it gets overshadowed by the bigger mistakes that you make. But there's an amazing amount of growth in a lot of these young guys, especially these 11 high school kids that just got here.